Hello and welcome to Moneylife News and Views. Auditors usually have a very boring and unexciting job. They pore over books of accounts, they go through income expenditure, make out a report to the management or the shareholders, and that's where the job ends. And nobody really knows much about what they do and how they go about doing their jobs. Well, this month they're in headlines in a rather negative way. A few weeks ago, in a very dramatic turn of events, two sleepy but potentially very powerful departments of the Government of India, which is Ministry of Company Affairs and Serious Frauds Investigation Office, really went after the auditors of a company called il&fs Financial Services. Well, on 11 June, the Ministry of Company Affairs moved the National Company Law Tribunal. What the MCA said was that the auditors of il&fs Financial Services, that is IFIN, should be barred from auditing for the next 5 years. This is such a very serious and a very dramatic charge. Now, the auditors of IFIN were BSR and Associates, and before that Deloitte Haskins and Sells. Deloitte is one of the top 4 in the world. BSR is an associate of KPMG, which is one of the top 4 in the world. These moves were just too dramatic, and this never happened. It's really shaken up the sleepy world, or the boring world, as I would call it, of the auditing profession. Now, MCA was acting on the recommendation or the investigation report of SFIO, the Serious Frauds Investigation Office. The MCA's move came because SFIO alleged that IFIN auditors, that is il&fs Financial Services, they had connived with the former directors of IFIN to conceal information about the wrongdoings. Now, all this has really had a tremendous effect on the profession, and very soon all the auditors everywhere have just got up, taken note of it, and started acting very, very independently. Just a week or two ago, Pricewaterhouse, another giant, one of the other big 4 in audit and taxation, which by the way was banned in 2018 by SEBI for its role in Satyam fraud, resigned as a statutory auditor of Reliance Capital. Now, they not just resigned. Earlier, auditors used to just quietly resign and go away. This time, Pricewaterhouse has charged that it was prevented from performing its duties and exercising independent judgment by Reliance Capital people. All these developments are very, very welcome. While it has disrupted the lives of some people and so on, but it is extremely good for the auditing profession, which has been out of the spotlight for many, many years. You see, there is an element of farce in the way auditing was being done. Under the Companies Act, almost all types of companies have to compulsorily get audited, and then the farce begins. Auditors are supposed to be appointed by the owners, which is the shareholders, and not by the management. But as anyone knows, in all private companies and almost most public listed companies, including large organizations, it is the promoter families that control both the management and the shareholding. But as anyone knows, that in all private companies and most public limited companies, including listed companies, it is the promoter families who control the shareholding, and therefore they are the management. They are the ones who really appoint the auditor. Now, in a small number of listed companies, which are so-called professionally run or belonging to large business houses where the shareholding has come down, theoretically, the so-called minority shareholders, including institutional shareholders, all put together, they would hold the majority. And they can potentially get together, propose a different auditor's name, and get a resolution passed. But have you ever seen this happening? This is simply impossible. Small shareholders never get together. Institutional shareholders are aloof where they shouldn't be, and therefore even in listed companies where the family does not hold a majority stake, effectively it is the family shareholding which really decides who should be the auditor and how should they act. Now, obviously, this sends a message to the auditors, and they therefore follow for them the first rule of their profession and their growth and development and so on is do not rub the management the wrong way, unless of course it's a case of egregious fraud, in which case you have to save your skin. But by and large, auditors toe the line the management wants them to. Now, what makes life even easier for auditors is a second principle or a second ground rule. Now, way back in 1898, in a case called Kingston Cotton Mills case, it was a very famous case, the judge, Justice Lopez, had ruled that auditors are supposed to be watchdogs. They are not supposed to be bloodhounds. It's a memorable phrase. Auditors are supposed to be watchdogs, not bloodhounds, and that really lets the auditor off the hook. If there is a very serious issue, they said, well, we didn't know, we are only supposed to be watchdogs. We are not supposed to go inside and ferret out a wrongdoing or a scam or so on. I mean, our job ends at a certain point. A third ground rule or principle makes the life even more simpler, which is auditors are supposed to express an opinion on the truth and fairness of the accounts, whether the accounts are true and fair. They are not supposed to certify anything. There is no guarantee that they have seen everything and checked everything and so on. I mean, after all, they do what is called test checks. In a large organization, you cannot check everything. You only check in batches of certain transactions or certain dealings. So at the end of the day, they are only expressing an opinion. So these three ground rules that you have to follow what the management says, that you are supposed to be a watchdog, not a bloodhound, and in the end, you're only expressing an opinion, has really made their lives fairly simple. Now, you might think that this is a story of only small companies and small auditors, and that's where all these things happen. In large companies, or professionally run companies, multinationals, or family, or big business houses where it's all governance is of a very high standard. All these things don't happen. Well, here is a story. When Tata Finance was involved in huge speculative market operations, circular transactions, and other suspect deals in the early 2000s, the Tatas went ahead and commissioned another audit firm called A. Ferguson to do a special audit to find out what the truth is. The Ferguson report was supervised by one of the senior partners, who was Mr. Y.M. Kale, and he did not give a clean chit to the Tata directors. So what happened? The Tatas rejected the report, and Mr. Kale was sacked by his own firm, that is A. Ferguson. And we don't know what the connection is, but this is a true story. Now, supposing you're a shareholder and you are aggrieved, or you're a partner, or you're, in some form you have a complaint against the auditor, you can theoretically go and complain to the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. There is a well laid out procedure, there is a disciplinary action committee, and so on and so forth, but all that's on paper. Now, I know of cases where the ICAI disciplinary council or the committee sided with the auditor who was involved in all the wrongdoing, and nothing really happened to the complaint. Insiders know how all this works. The CAs know how all this works. So the bright CAs, they do not want to get into the audit profession. Some do. They are also very bright and they are also very ethical. They feel frustrated because they can't grow their business by being too ethical. Now, all this that's been happening that I described earlier, which is the Pricewaterhouse resigning and Deloitte being sought to be banned and so on, has come exactly at the right time. Very soon, a new organization, a new authority called National Financial Regulatory Authority is going to start fully getting operational. They're going to be an independent regulator to regulate audit, accounting, and other financial standards. All this was earlier done by Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. So ICAI saw its power going away, and so they fought this concept of NFRA tooth and nail. They made 4 points. One is that we are a world-class organization. This always happens when SEBI came. Everybody said that we do not need SEBI because stock exchanges have been around for 100 years, and we are world-class organizations. The ICI also said that NFRA will mean additional costs. They do not have competent people, and there will be multiple levels of regulations and regulatory authority, and all this is really not needed. But by now, over the last so many decades, everybody knows ICI has really let down the profession in many ways. So nobody was interested in listening to ICI. And so, although between 2010 and 2017, there was a lot of battle between ICI and the government, eventually the whole idea of NFRA has been accepted, it's got going, and so we are going to have a full-fledged independent regulator very soon. Now, this is a very important development. After all, auditors' reports not just help the shareholders. Auditors' reports also help regulators, government, investors, bankers, and the public at large, whoever is interested in a company. And so we must have, as much as possible, good quality independent audit reports. And so this current cleanup has to continue to gain momentum and go across the profession, which is what we desperately need. Now, the first step in this would be to empower the smaller CAs, the medium-sized chartered accountants, who want to act independently and do not want to be at the mercy of the current system. Right? Now, I personally know that when CAs set up their shop, when they get into audit profession or they become tax professionals or whatever, they all want to do an honest independent job. They do not want to be part of accounting fiddles. Now, we need to ensure that they see NFRA as delivering truth and fairness in their own profession. Now, the second step would be to raise the auditing standards itself. For instance, SEBI is thinking of making the auditor of parent companies responsible for the accounts of subsidiaries. And this is another big gray area. You have a listed parent company which may have 5 or 6 subsidiary companies in other jurisdictions like in Latin America or in Africa or whatever, and those subsidiaries may be carrying some sort of a questionable activities, but the parent company's auditor is not interested or has no sort of responsibility to oversee that. They just take the audit report from that jurisdiction and say, well, this is what we have been told, and that's that. So SEBI says this is not going to work anymore. You will have to be responsible for the audit reports of subsidiaries also. Now, other countries in various ways, slowly over a period of time, have moved away from, so as I said, the watchdog metaphor, watchdog, not a bloodhound, from that situation, and now they demand a far greater duty of care. Finally, the third step would be to impose special standards for specific sectors like finance companies or banks or financial institutions. Now, there the problems are the maximum. The fragility is the highest because they're always playing with large sums of other people's money. With a small amount of capital, huge amounts of borrowing. Something goes wrong on the asset side of the balance sheet, the whole company can collapse. In 1958, Lord Denning, who was another very famous judge, wrote this about the auditors. To perform his task properly, he must come to it with an inquiring mind, not a suspicious mind, nor of dishonesty. However, I suspect if Justices Denning, and earlier I referred to Justice Lopez of the watchdog and bloodhound fame, if they were to rule today, they would say when it comes to banks and financial institutions, auditors should be bloodhounds. They should have minds which are not only inquiring but suspicious. Thanks for watching.